Hit me.
From Studio A in Arcata, behind a redwood curtain, it's time for...
Succotash.
Succotash Chats, the original Comedy Soundcast Soundcast featuring interviews from Comedy
Soundcast.
Comedians, comedian soundcasters, and other showbiz folk. And here's your host from up the coast, practically unknown outside of Comedy Soundcast Soundcasting, Tyson Saner.
Felicxan Novjaron, estas me, Tyson Saner, your host for this special first Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast of the Year edition of Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. And let's not kid ourselves, this Chats episode very likely could not have come at a more appropriate time. Your friends in podcasting, Phil Leirness and Dean Haglund of Chillpak Hollywood Hour, agreed to sit down with me earlier this week to discuss their brilliant independent film, the dark comedy, The Ladykillers. If you are an adult and have not seen this film yet, I believe that you should. It explores the theme of toxic masculinity and its symptoms of Sexual-Conquest-as-Friendly competition, as well as the plausible consequences involved when it all stops being fun and starts being deadly. Just for clarification, this film is not a remake of the 1955 film The Ladykillers, where lady and killers are combined into one word for a total of 2 words in the title. The actual remake in question was released in 2004 and directed by Ethan and Joel Cohn. This, more recent film was released in 2017, and its title is comprised of 3 words. If you Google it as 3 words, those words being The, Lady, and Killers, Google will ask you if you meant to search for those other films. Even if you put the 3-word search, The Ladykillers, in quotes. No, Google, I am not looking for those other films, and I did mean to look for this one. Perhaps, if this film began trending, Google might recognize it better. But I don't claim to know how Google does what it does. Indeed, the best solution is to bypass Google completely and go to the web address, theladykillersmovie.com, because that is its website. And that is TheLadykillersmovie.com. In addition to our interview with your Chillpak Hollywood Hour, I've got a single burst of Durst from Raging Moderate Will Durst and selected reading from TrumpPoetry.com. So let's get started. First up, our single burst of Durst from Raging Moderate Will Durst. This one is from Friday, December 28th of 2018, and it's called Will Durst's 2018 Xmas Gift Wish List, where all the S's in this title are styled as $signs. In which our intrepid correspondent rights the wrongs of the season.
Hey guys, Will Durst here to thank the baby Jesus that all those annoying ads for the Christmas sales have blessedly disappeared to be replaced by all those annoying ads for the after Christmas sales. It's that time of year when the holiday music is stuffed back into the vault of mistletoe and we have to wait 10 whole months to hear the same 30 songs sung by the same 30 people. And at the end of the holiday season, it is our self-imposed task here at Durst Co. to right the many wrongs perpetrated by the corpulent, bearded, cisgender male in the scarlet suit. Apparently, Santa's bag had some holes in it, and a few folks didn't find the presents they truly deserved under their tree. A little something we would like to rectify here with Will Durst's 2018 Christmas Gift Wish List. For Kellyanne Conway, a red, white, and blue muzzle. For General James Mattis, an all-expenses-paid vacation to the relative calm of Damascus, Syria. For Nancy Pelosi, a 55-gallon drum of patience. For Kamala Harris, some of Hillary Clinton's excess testosterone. For Donald Trump, one of those Chinese finger traps for his thumbs. For Mike Pence, a strobe light to give the appearance of movement at press conferences. For Elon Musk, a lifetime supply of whatever medicine they give to kids with attention deficit disorder. For Rudy Giuliani, mint-flavored shoelaces for whenever he puts his foot in his mouth. For Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, a wall to control our immigration. For Ruth Bader Ginsburg, 2 spools of really, really strong bubble wrap. And finally, for the American people, total gridlock for the 116th Congress. No harm, no foul. for Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. I'm Will Durst.
You can go to willdurst.com for the Will Durst Journal, which is comedy for people who read or know someone who does. And you can reach Will Durst on Twitter at WILLDURST. Phil Leirness, Dean Haglund, welcome to Succotash.
Hey, it's going to be the Succotash. Congratulations on taking over from Marc.
Oh, thank you so much.
That was Dean Haglund. I'm Phil Leirness, and I feel with Tyson, it's both a return to Succotash and my first time ever on Succotash.
Yes.
Interesting. I'm going to have to parse that one later as I edit and figure out exactly what was meant by that. But I appreciate it. So, how are you both this morning / afternoon?
Wow. Shall I start? I am freezing. It is picture perfect here in Detroit. The sun is out. There is what looks to be 2 to 4 inches of snow on the ground. It is as if I'm living in a Christmas card that I didn't send this year.
Nice.
He stole what I was going to say.
There's not 4 inches of snow in Los Angeles.
Oh, I don't know. How would I know? It's not even 9 o'clock in the morning yet here, Dean. The sun isn't up. None of us are outside. It's the middle of the night here at 8:40 in the morning.
Oh boy!
I'm reminded of L.A. Story with Steve Martin in his job as a weatherman, where it's just nice every day, except for the one day he decides to wing it and throw magnets at the board and see what sticks. And
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's but yeah.
He records, doesn't he? Pre-record his weather.
I believe he does.
He's
like, "Hey, look over here! So we got nice weather here," and he's just throwing the little pucks onto the board and they're sticking.
This is the second time in a matter of weeks that L.A. Story has come up in conversation.
No kidding.
Which I would have thought would have delighted me, but it just kind of disturbs me.
Oh no!
What's that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, for years I always would quote that movie, and no one would know. And then all of a sudden, I was at a party recently where someone quoted it back to me. And I was flabbergasted. Anyway, I think clearly a theme has emerged for this episode of Succotash. It's 3 guys discussing L.A. Story.
Yay!
Hooray!
Wait, no, is that really what we're doing?
I mean, it's one of those. Go ahead.
Well, Tyson saw our movie, The Ladykillers, as I understand it.
That is true. I did. I've seen it twice now.
Whoa.
That's more than I have.
I was going to say that. It's true, though. Dean has only seen it once. So Tyson, tell him what he's missing.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So, it's interesting. The last, year of my life interacting with the podcasts that I do interact with, I've heard a conversation about something called toxic masculinity for a while, even wanting to do a podcast specifically on topics such as that, since the ones that I currently do are generally more comedy focused, and I do try to keep politics off of Antisocial Show, but they do invariably come up anyway. But I do think that things like toxic masculinity and probably heard this term, rape culture, are things that are really important. And I know that my understanding rather, is that this film, wasn't made recently. However, I mean, it recently, certainly within, in the general scheme of things, but was it not planned and executed well before #MeToo or anything like that?
Absolutely. When did we start this?
Well, I don't know. It wasn't completed well before. I think that's not quite true. It took us a long time to make the film, especially editing and finishing the movie. And as Dean can attest to, especially with always with comedy, but especially with dark comedy, getting that tone absolutely right is not an easy task. And it's one of those things where if you let the air out of the balloon for an instant, there's no getting it back. It's such a delicate tone to dark comedy. And and there's no recovering it. So it really was a laborious process, not only in terms of editing, but then in terms of testing the film and re-editing. So it was a lengthy process. But I will say that we finished the film about a year before anybody was willing to look at it.
Right.
And then there was a presidential election.
Oh yes. Was there?
So we were thinking we would hit the ground running at the beginning of 2016, and nobody wanted to see the film. I mean, we were literally told this kind of misogyny, this kind of exploitation, this doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Point blank told that. Then there was a presidential election, and suddenly some people said, could we take a look at that? or would we take another look at it? And finally, a film festival was willing to take a chance on it. And when I say take a chance on it, it's because film festivals operate, for the most part, no differently than the film business itself, which is the name of the game is consensus. And a dark comedy is all about proving divisive. And you might get some people who love it, but you are going to get some people who really abhor it. And if you don't have that kind of discomfort from watching it, you haven't done your job. That makes it very difficult to get it programmed into festivals because the programming boards and committees on these festivals are trying to gain a certain amount of consensus with their colleagues. And but so, like I said, it was done, and we were a little bit like, well, what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah.
And then Me Too happened, and suddenly, yes, we found ourselves with a film that was made about a cultural event that had yet to take place when we made the movie.
Wow.
You know, that happens. That happens sometimes with artists jumping into the zeitgeist unbeknownst. You know, I think of the X-Files and all the conspiracy and UFO stuff that nobody had even heard of, that suddenly Chris Carter was creating years before actually everybody was really into it. So it has that same kind of feel with this movie, actually.
And it's, of course, the themes are ones that had interested me for quite some time, as both a filmmaker and as a violence prevention specialist here in California. Mm-hmm. But it really was interesting after. So I've been living with these ideas, these themes, these issues, these topics for quite some time. I've been researching them, educating about them, telling stories relating to them. But we made this movie, Me Too happens, and suddenly we actually had written in one review that our actor Ari Gross was clearly playing Harvey Weinstein.
Wow.
Which, of course, was not something that was on our radar at that point. But as Dean and I have talked about, I can't actually say Ari wasn't playing Harvey Weinstein because he clearly was embodying an archetype that, I don't know, that resonated with him for this character. And he had met Harvey before. He had worked with Harvey. So he was calling upon something very real. And right. maybe it was certainly Harvey Weinstein or someone of that ilk. But we never had that conversation. That's for sure.
That's amazing. I mean, it's I don't remember who said it, but it's there's a saying something to the nature of it's very easy to predict the future. You just don't necessarily know when that future is going to occur.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody told us that at a screening where we were able to announce that we finally had distribution for the film. It also happened to be the same screening where I got engaged to
yes.
our co-producer Lily Holloman.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I said that to all my friends and all her relatives that said, boy, you guys were together for almost 11 years. What took so long? I said, well, it's very easy to predict the future. You just...
See what you did?
Yeah. And by the way, the ensemble is fantastic in this movie. Everybody's acting is on point. And it's fantastic to watch because I love watching acting. I know it sounds, obviously people like watching movies, but, there's a certain amount of spectacle involved with a lot of films. And then there are, more performance performance driven films, which I feel this is pretty performance driven. Pretty. It's somewhat, what a diminutive word. But it's like one of my favorite films is in fact a dark comedy with great acting, at least in my estimation, and it's called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Yes.
And
you see that as a comedy?
Yeah, well, it's a dark comedy. I mean, I think it's very funny, but I recognize that it's also very, it's disturbing, and there's a lot not said in it, but so much more said and or implied.
I always loved ensemble pieces, and especially in the 70s, films like Nashville, directed by Robert Altman, and one of the reasons that I love it is because I've always loved supporting actors. I've loved supporting players, and as I find myself telling my acting students, why do we call them supporting? What is it that they're supporting? And to me, it's that these supporting players are supporting our belief in the world that we're watching. We will follow a story. We will watch a movie, a TV show, a play, if the lead characters are attractive, interesting, funny, etc. But we will only believe that world if we believe the people around them who inhabit that world. And so it's a real fun challenge to say, okay, let's make that ensemble be the focus. And therefore, though, there again, like with the tone, you can't have any weak spot. You can't have any spot that blows up your belief in the world, or the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. So that's a real challenge. And then the fun of it is that it really felt like when we were filming it, like I was getting to make 7 different short films, and every few days it would be a different lead actor.
Yeah, well, that's true. The pressure was off for me on the acting part, specifically because everyone else was so great. So when you get ensemble, there's also a more relaxed feel to it, that you're not getting a sore back by having to carry this heavy, bloody thing. You can just sort of kick back a little bit, and then
I don't think that's true. But I do think that one, that you might just be lazy, but 2, acting is supposed to be a team sport.
Right.
I mean, I don't like the athletics metaphor unless I can use it to my advantage. But it is supposed to be a team sport. And it is crazy how often that gets forgotten, especially where acting for the camera is concerned. But when you're part of this ensemble, and it truly, you can't ignore the fact that it's about just hitting the ball back and forth.
Right.
It does remove that sense of pressure if you're doing it right, and it becomes just a sense of fun and exploration.
That's true, and it was a joy to do. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it was great because Jamie Kaler, who plays the detective in the film, he and I would take so much joy in any moments on screen where Dean gets angry. And it was awesome because, nothing delighted us more than that. So we would keep asking him to do take after take after take. And he would get so frustrated because he didn't know what was wrong with the earlier takes, and there wasn't anything wrong with them. They were making us laugh so much. And so he would just get angrier and angrier and angrier, just for us, the funnier it got.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
It was actually pretty fun to see because he seemed such a stern presence in this film that I was pretty afraid of him in the movie. I mean, I understood, it's a character, but there was this, I don't know how else to describe it. Sternness, I guess, was good. It was a very, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, spoiler territory wise, as far as the story, because so much of this, I feel, works by not knowing anything about how it's going to unfold. So most of my notes are about just little details that are not. And by the way, I don't mean notes like what I would have done, but notes like little things I noticed that I liked and wanted to ask about.
Well, I think we could at least probably set it up for everybody by just saying that the basic premise is 7 guys, most of whom knew each other in college, where they played a game of romantic conquest, decide decades later to have a reunion game, but now having gone on to achieve things in their lives and for whatever reason, several of them desiring to blow up their lives, decide, won't it be fun if we add some big financial stakes to this game? So and also bring in a couple new players. And so these 7 guys set out to play this game of high-stakes romantic conquest, which leads to several crimes along the way.
Oh, yes.
And Dean in it plays the one guy who really does not want to play the game and gets extorted into playing.
Right.
That was okay. Good. So those are things like that are okay to mention, that the reluctance and whatnot. That yes, exactly. And it's funny because aside from that last bit, it's what I've been hearing about the plot from listening to Chillpak and reading about it, and I was really delighted to see how it played out. And I really like the interaction between the characters and little lines that would come in. There was one I wrote down something called. Couple of things called notable quotables. And this is just me, but little things like during one of the meetings, one character remarked to the other one, "Human centipede it later."
Oh my goodness. I'm glad you liked that, because that was an ad lib or an improv bit that Jamie Kaler threw in that I liked so much, and I had him then do it in several different takes, and no one else has ever responded to it. No one else has ever responded to it, and I worked so hard to actually fit that in.
Wow. I mean, it's such a specific reference too, that I like that it's basically like it's a reference to something else kind of taken to the extreme, and one really kind of has to know what it means in order to appreciate the just the casualness. This guy has such disdain for, I mean, are these his friends? Even the people he claims to be his friends? Because they tend to treat each other just terribly, and not even like in a. It doesn't even seem to be a fun rivalry, so it makes you wonder why they're friends. Some of these people, which is great.
I mean, if Tyson, it must be very painful for you to watch political figures in Washington behave with each other, right?
I mean, it's mostly just clips of CNN and MSNBC these days. That's what I can handle. I like Morning Joe. I like Rachel Maddow, Ari Melber because he quotes rap lyrics.
But I mean, we do go from a time seemingly where friends are ratting on each other. At the drop of a hat.
Oh, yeah. So, wow, yeah. So the parallels, absolutely. I did have a question about certain things. Now, my understanding is often during filmmaking that there are little visual things put in. I don't mean like an effect, but I mean like just set dressing, generally speaking. And I wanted to ask about something that was a little detail that. So there's a conversation that takes place in what looks like the hallway outside a meeting place that they're at. And there's a poster for, I'm guessing, a musical group, Alana and These Fine Gentlemen.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's funny. Okay. And your question is, why is that poster there?
Or who? Yeah, is it? What's the connection? Because I might have missed it if I didn't look through the soundtrack. I apologize. So go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's two connections. One is that the Alana in question, it is a band. It is actually a band, Alana and These Fine Gentlemen, a very good band, house band at a couple different clubs here in Los Angeles. But the Alana of Alana and These Fine Gentlemen, she turns up in the film playing a coroner who will interact with the character who's standing by her poster earlier in the film.
Okay. And
if you see the theatrical cut of the film, which you have not, you would have to go to a theater to see it. You will hear an Alana and These Fine Gentlemen song.
That's it. There are at least 2 theaters in Arcata, California, where I reside, that might run it if it were to come through. I have no say over that.
They might run like blazes the first chance they get when the film comes knocking. If we could dial this back just to the conversation about Friends and what you were saying, I've been really struck by that because nobody's ever brought this up before. But it is, I think, part and parcel with this topic of toxic masculinity. I was always struck when I would do violence prevention work, and often I would be asked to go to lockdown facilities where young men had already perpetrated some act of violence that was now going to alter the trajectory of their lives, never mind the lives of the people who were on the receiving end of this violence, but their lives themselves, they were now realizing would be irrevocably altered. And one of the things that would get said to me a lot was, I wish that at least one of my friends had pulled me aside and said, you're on a dangerous path. Don't do this. But instead, somehow friendship at some point stopped being raising the bar and holding the people that we like the most accountable. Holding each other's feet to the fire, that stopped being what friendship meant. And instead it became this bizarre idea of, you have your friends back no matter what they do.
Right.
And yet I would argue that to have your friends back would mean you don't let them do something that might ruin their life.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah. A group judgment.
Exactly. But now if you call someone or hold someone accountable for the potential destructive nature of their actions or their attitudes, you're somehow not being a friend. And we need to rewrite that. Because friends absolutely should hold each other accountable. I think that's one of the big things. Again, we don't want to get too much into politics, but it's one of the things about political discourse that disappoints me the most is that we seem to give a pass to the behavior of those who agree with us politically, as opposed to, I agree with this person, so therefore I am going to hold them more accountable for their actions, not only because I want to agree with the message, but because I want them to be a credible messenger.
It's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's If that isn't a metaphor for our current state of politics, then I don't know what is.
But so I do think that that's really important. I think this kind of tribal element that is so fervent in our culture right now was something that we're looking at and deconstructing in the Ladykillers by showing how obviously boys will be boys, but how unfortunately men will be boys now too.
Right.
Absolutely. There's another detail that I enjoyed. That is, there's a couple of elements in the film that are driven by this aspect of the plot, but I like the poster, the Rob's Ha House, and the show is called Horrified, in quotes, then says, relive your childhood. It wasn't funny then, but it might be funny now, which in itself is an interesting idea. And then in all caps, public humiliation begins at 8 p.m. Now, this sounds like something that actually probably happens in theater communities or what have you, where there's some kind of exercise or display, or was this something taken to the nth degree? Because it doesn't seem that far out of the realm of things that have happened before.
It is not out of the realm. In fact, it's the raison d'etre for one of our actors being in the film. Sean Parker, who plays the periodontist, who's so great in the film.
Oh, yes.
He first came to my attention in an acting class, actually taught by David Dean Botrell, who also plays a rather delicious small role in the film. But I saw him in this acting class, and I wanted to learn more about him. And the only thing that I could find was an NPR piece on a stage show called Mortified.
Oh.
And it was about people coming to this stage show and reading old diaries, old love letters, old poems from their formative years that embarrass them or leave them feeling shame. And through the process of taking ownership on them and sharing them on stage, they get to rewrite in some way their own feelings of their formative years. And it's a very therapeutic, it seems, show, very inspirational, very healing. I was able to attend one that Sean was performing, and he was the focus of this NPR piece on it. So I told our producing partner, Bert Boulos, who also acts in the film, about this show. And I asked him, can I write something for this guy? He's never done any acting, but he has it in him, and I see him as this part. Can I write a part for him? And Bert said, not only can you write a part for him, but you need to write this into the movie, because what a great way to get chicks.
Wow.
And so suddenly, not only do I put it in the film, but I twist it in a horrible, horrible way so that it's used as just, again, a sexual conquest tool, and I give that tool to Bert's character.
Yeah, there is no shortage of bad behavior and things that I would never imagine transgressing upon another human being that I claim to be friends with. And is their relationship is it makes you wonder. Well, there's definitely a power dynamic at play. If I might say, Bert Boulos' character doesn't actually really seem to like anybody. And like from the moment I met, especially the second time I watched it, I looked at him. First time he appears on screen, I thought, this guy is not to be trusted. There's something going on that is just darkness behind those eyes. There's something like ugly and dark there that is just waiting. It's
so funny because I think, maybe it's starting to dawn on him how reprehensible his character is, but he thought it was, to borrow a phrase from the Chinatown sequel, The Two Jakes, I think Bert believed his character to be the leper with the most fingers, like the least bad guy in it. And he thought, yeah, he's kind of cool. He knows what he wants, and he's desperate, and he's going after it, and he's a cool guy. And but you're so right. In the end of the film, there, when the playing cards are revealed that do a couple of things, they reveal a color scheme that was present throughout the movie that could allow you to know who's doing what to whom all the time.
Right.
It also shows where the characters end up. And most of them end up somewhere in hell. Yeah. And his character ends up in the innermost circle of the lowest rung of hell, because he truly has no backbone at all. He truly betrays everyone and everything he claims to care about. There is no fidelity with him whatsoever. And so it felt very appropriate to me to start the film with him, right? It begins with him seemingly waking up, a la Shakespeare's The Tempest, wondering, how did I find myself in the center of this storm? And there's an opening shot of this train going into this tunnel, and there's two tracks that the tunnel could take, and one is more lit and one is more dark. And a case could really be made that this is the dream he's waking up to, and that in that moment he has a choice to make. And once he makes this choice, then everything is irrevocably moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just thought of the train tracks in my head. I do remember seeing the tunnels and think, oh, that's interesting. I'm sure I noticed it on a subconscious level, but much more so the second time when I was really looking for details that I might have missed. I do
something happens to him in the film in a steam bath. Mm-hmm. We won't say what, but something happens in the steam bath. And if you're paying close attention, amidst the sound of the steam bath, you can hear a train on its tracks arriving.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to have to go back and have a look at that. That's neat.
This episode of Succotash is sponsored in part by TrumPoetry.com, a chronological ode to a fake muse. Enjoy a rhyming spin on the news of the day every day, as well as over 500 archived daily verses thoroughly covering the White House, America, and the world with a sticky caramel coating that's impossible to remove. That's TRUMPoetry.com. Everything you need to know in rhyming couplets. TrumPoetry.com.
Yes, TrumPoetry.com. This episode's selections are from the last day of 2018 and the first day of 2019. So first up, from December 31st, 2018, number 752. This whiplash tour de force of world events, a wearied year of many and much, and yet so sadly lacking in the touch that points us to a way that might make sense. So wide, so deep the space that lies between, and now that chasm globally connected can rock to dust the best that we've erected, and only then lament what might have been. A year at closing time, a cycle ending, a fixed point source of infinite potential, in some small way a choice that's reverential. Absorb and dare to radiate the mending. If it no longer serves, ring out the old. Weigh what you feel beyond what you are told. And from January 1st, 2019, number 751. How sad our Prez chose not to go. Ring the new in at Mar-a-Lago. May he sit on the John, tweeting out until dawn, 2 reruns of Guy Lombardo. All right, let's get back into the interview with Phil Leirness and Dean Haglund of Chillpak Hollywood Hour.
There seems to be some, I don't want to say hidden, but definitely there's religious imagery, overtones, ideas. The choice of the words, I think the choice of words, I think, is really important. It's one of the reasons why I've been was studying Esperanto last year, is because there's a specific word for everything, and that you don't use one word when you mean to say another.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, for example, like in language, in greetings, when you say "How are you doing?" instead of "Hello," but people think that "How are you doing?" is "Hello." Some people think it is, when actually "How are you doing?" is a question. And you might get an answer, and if you're just expecting them to say hello back, it's kind of on you, because you could have just said hello, because that is, but then again, hello has its own thing. My point is, there's a line in there toward the end where it's not why would you do this? It's what would possess you to play a game like this? I thought that was an important word choice because of the references to Dante, because of there is a number of the beast that shows up in the film as well. There's little things. I can take all these potential spoilers and references out at your request, but I did notice them.
Well, is anything spoiled? I don't think so.
I don't know. I just maybe I'm spoiling the chance for people to discover these things on their own.
First of all, I've got to strongly disagree with you on one point.
Okay, certainly.
We all know that the reason you're studying Esperanto is so that you can enjoy that William Shatner feature film in Esperanto in its original language. That's why you're doing it.
Incubus?
Exactly. Is that it, or was it White Comanche? I can never remember.
It's called Incubus, yeah.
But you can't go wrong with either, really. There's an interesting thing that Tucker Smallwood, the great Tucker Smallwood, who plays the bartender, the proprietor of the club where much of our film's key scenes are set, he he said something in an interview that when he first read through the script, it occurred to him that his character might not be the devil, but was certainly a minion of evil, nudging humans along. They still have free will. They're going to do what they're going to do, but nudging them in the direction of their worst inclination. And what I loved about him saying that in this interview was, we had never discussed it, but in the earliest drafts of the script, his character truly was the devil. Oh. And the end of the film did take place in hell.
Wow.
So that, yeah, so there is that running through. I think the film, what Tucker says in that interview that I think is most important, is that the film plays out on a multiple levels of reality. And you don't have to appreciate any, or all of them to be able to appreciate the film. You can just kind of plug in to a particular level of reality, and the film, I think, will work. But it's hard to watch it without being aware that yes, there are other levels at play here.
Okay. Nice. I like the line. Can we dock points from both of them?
Oh, that was my line.
Yeah, it was great.
It
was really funny,
yeah.
Especially in the moment there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if that was written anymore. It's one of those things where you don't. We had a lot of fun, improvising on this film, and it's kind of interesting because, well, two things. One, we came upon a motif that I really like and I look forward to using again, which is you start the scene as scripted, and then you encourage as much play as possible, as much improvisation as possible, and then right before you let go of the scene, you go back to the scene as scripted. And what you'll often find is that everything you discovered through playing and through ad-libbing and through improvisation, all the intention of that is still in the scene, but now it's being expressed through the scripted lines. Mm-hmm. So I really liked that. That was a lot of fun and really rewarding. But the other thing that was sort of stunning to me was that classically trained improvisational performer Dean Haglund actually was one of the performers who ad-libbed the least.
That's what I was about to say. I don't remember improvising that much. Your scripted lines were very specific and kind of major to the plot. So if I started improvising and riffing, I think the movie would have taken home another 12 hours of footage. That would have been bad.
Well, that would have been fine. That would have just added another year to the post-production. But I would have loved it. No, you're on to something, though, which is, and maybe it didn't occur to me, but your character is so key to, as you say, the plot. It's not that you're servicing the plot,
no,
but your character is so key to everything that will unfold that if you had played around in any way that altered the course, it could have proved quite problematic. Yeah. And also your character probably, I think it's fair to say, might be the character who has the clearest idea of who he is and where he's at in his life.
Oh, I'd say that comes across. Yeah, that's
and therefore your character is the one least likely to just fuck around and say things that he doesn't mean.
Right?
He doesn't want to play.
By the way, I just dropped an F-bomb on the new Succotash, Tyson. Is that okay?
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, I tend to leave those in on Succotash. It's antisocial show where I tend to use creative bleeps. Succotash is fine. Although I have put a creative bleep or two in once in a while just to be funny, or to try to be, or to give people the. Sorry.
That would be a spot to put one in.
Oh, well, yeah, but I don't know. It depends. Do you care if I leave it in?
No, of course, on our show, Chillpak Hollywood Hour, Tyson, if our guests don't swear, they end up on the cutting room floor.
Oh.
That's right.
Well, I'll be sure and curse up a storm if it ever comes to fruition. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's a whole thing with editing. Well, you know how editing. When one edits sound, or one edits their own podcast, or two of them, there's just some choices that need to be made occasionally. And I made the choice somewhere around episode 26, 5, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of our 3 or 4 episode interview arc with comedian Ed Wallach, that I just decided to start bleeping the episodes, but I didn't want to just have beeps, so I decided to make distinct sounding bleeps for each word, so you'd still basically know what the word is. I mean, we're not fooling anybody. It's just, but that way I can put the non-explicit status in the thing.
Oh my goodness!
So yeah,
I love it. And then you're starting a whole thing where a particular sound can mean a certain thing.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah, it
which
became
has
a thing.
just as dirty connotations.
Oh yeah, and it's easier really just to cut out the parts, but sometimes there's a long rant and my co-host goes off on something and it's like, no, I want to keep this, so I'll just take the time to cover up all the S words and F words that come out when somebody gets a good head of steam going and is really, what's the word? I guess exuberant about something.
I had a friend who was a wonderful performer, sadly now dead completely, but he used to love using titles of movies as his curses.
Oh.
And he did it really well. I mean, it always worked, damn him. This was how good he was at it. But, for example, he might come in during a heat wave and say, "Snakes on a plane, it's hot out there."
That's a good one.
And like Jumanji was what he would drop instead of an F-bomb. And it was really good. I think Esperanto, quite frankly, it sounds like a curse.
It does. But, oddly enough, it means
how hard is to learn Esperanto? Who's teaching that nowadays?
Oh, it's not.
I walked in with a whole lot of Esperanto in my hands, and I said, "Look what I almost stepped in."
Look what oh yeah, that's a good one. The old joke. It's in answer to your question. It's supposed to be as easy. It's supposed to be the easiest language in the world to learn. In fact, the claim is that a native Chinese only speaker and a native English only speaker can reach the same level of Esperanto knowledge or functioning, working, speaking language of it. See how well I do with English. Proficiency, thank you. They can supposedly reach the same level of proficiency in 4 months. And I used there's an app called Duolingo.
Oh, yeah.
That makes, for those who haven't heard of Duolingo, it makes learning a new language into kind of a series of little games and tests that like little micro games. So before too long, you're reading it. Certainly I can read it. I can read a lot of it. I can't always, I kind of stopped for a while, but I could probably pick it up again. There's really simple rules to learn in it. All the vowels and consonants always sound exactly the same. They never change. The inflection of words is always, the stress is on the second to last syllable. That never changes. Nouns and adverbs, verbs, which one? Adjectives always end in a certain letter. I can't remember what it is now. When I was actually actively doing this a lot more around this time last year, I had a lot of this memorized, but sadly,
wow.
Yes. So yeah, it's
Duolingo is teaching you Esperanto for the purpose of watching a William Shatner movie.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully there are subtitles on that William Shatner movie, but
okay.
I'll tell you, it's one thing to hear, a bunch of sentences and go, "Oh, I'm understanding this," and then to listen to a Esperanto-only podcast, of which there are a couple, where you hear very, very, well-established and elderly voices speaking fluent Esperanto and realizing, oh yeah, no, this is something that requires a lot of practice and a lot of hearing how people pronounce words can change, even though the vowels and consonants are are all
Now,
standardized.
I am shocked by this. I'm shocked by this movement, honestly, because when I was a kid growing up in the 1970s here in California, Esperanto, there was like a hot second where we were supposed to study Esperanto because this was going to be the universal language.
Yes.
And that lasted just about as long as our study of the metric system. And because we were going to convert to the metric system here in the States. And it had been my understanding up until this Succotash chat that both of those things, Esperanto and the metric system, were dead.
Oh, no. No, there's a flourishing Esperanto. There's a culture. I don't know.
You can't speak to the metric system, but there is a flourishing culture of Esperanto. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, my measuring cups still have both metric and I don't know what the other one is. Standard? What do we call our own?
Standard. We call it standard, buddy. We call it standard. We call it American. Love it or leave it.
I lived in Australia for 4 years. It's known as Imperial.
Imperial, that's right.
We're building a giant, beautiful wall around the metric system.
The metric system is very much like sounding like Esperanto. It's easy to figure out. Never mind.
You know, it's interesting. Esperantists were early Esperantists were among the people that were really, I don't know if captured is the right word, but they were definitely put in concentration camps alongside of all the other people they were putting in. They thought apparently Hitler believed that that Esperanto was a language that was a part of the quote-unquote Jewish conspiracy, and rounded up members of the founder, Erich Zamenhof's family, put them all in concentration camps, but they were able to continue teaching Esperanto to other prisoners by saying that they were actually teaching Italian to each other, because it actually kind of parts of it sound pretty similar to it. It actually sounds a lot like Latin in spots, which is probably no accident.
Right.
So just when I started worrying that our whole discussion of the Ladykillers was making the film not sound fun or funny enough for people to check out, we went ahead and we dropped a Protocols of the Elders of Zion on them.
Wow. Yes, we dropped the H-bomb, as it were, also.
Yeah, so that's good. So in comparison to Hitler locking up linguists in concentration camps, the Ladykillers is slightly less dark than that.
I mean, what conversation about toxic masculinity would be complete without mentioning Hitler?
There's a point.
Oh my God!
Sorry about that.
I would have said in all conversations about toxic masculinity, playing Hitler is the trump card. But now that seems like a political statement. So I don't want to.
Nice one.
This is how difficult it is for Tyson to edit these conversations, Dean.
Right.
Well, just as evidence of how difficult it is for him to edit this, we actually recorded this conversation before the Me Too movement started.
Yes, so those of you hearing it for the first time, we predicted the future.
We are dogged by cunning foresight. We want to, at some point, get to turn the table and ask you a couple questions about the new Succotash. I keep calling it the new Succotash. But is there more? Should we shamelessly plug our movie some more?
You can as much as you like. I'm game to do either.
Do you have questions for us? Do you have questions for us about this runaway freight train comedic success that's changing the way people view movies?
Let's see. Well, where can it be found, actually, is one I'd really like to know, because I think people need to know, if they aren't interested in it by now, and good Lord, they should be. Where can you watch it? Where can the average person who has not been given a secret link find the movie to watch it?
First of all, only exceptional people should watch the... just by virtue of watching an independent comedy, I think you are exceptional. People can find the best way to find a portal through which you can learn how you can see it at a screening, or how you can watch it right now on demand across a wide variety of cable and internet platforms, or how you can watch it on DVD. The easiest way to do this is to go to the film's website, theladykillersmovie.com.
All right.
Theladykillersmovie.com. And there's information about the movie, obviously, and about the people in it and the people who made it. But for the most part, it is a perfect portal to finding a way to watch the movie.
Yes, and people definitely should see it. It is. I have a feeling it's going to be like conversion therapy for some people. Maybe conversion therapy isn't the right term, but there's especially not with the context it's taken on. But there is. What am I? Head change? What am I thinking of? There's some kind of it's going to be a wake up call for some people. There are going to be people who process it as a personal attack, which if they do, they perhaps should. And others that might not understand it, but should watch it anyway, because there's going to be moments in their continued existence, otherwise known as the future, where they make realizations about it and make connections that they perhaps didn't the first time they saw it, and maybe understand a little bit more about what they perhaps have been doing wrong. And I think that's a good thing. So
yeah, I actually think the film might be hardest on those people who are already on board with the themes of it. I think the film is actually maybe the hardest view for those people, believe it or not, because there's maybe not so much to enjoy except a feeling of, well, they're right. Right. So, but it is an interesting watch. The first time I saw it with an audience, hell, why lie? Every time I see it with an audience, I am so uncomfortable. This movie makes me uncomfortable, and I made it. And I ask myself, why do you do this to yourself? Why did you make a movie that would make you uncomfortable? And but I do fundamentally believe that there is great hope for us as a species, and that hope rests in our willingness to be unsettled. As long as we are willing to do that, there is always hope for us. But I told this story once to Marc Hershon, your predecessor on Succotash, who wrote about this in a Huffington Post piece. He wrote about the film when we were struggling to get any eyeballs on it at festivals. And it was that at one of our test screenings I alluded to earlier, 3 couples actually broke up after seeing the movie because of their reactions to the movie.
Oh, wow.
And that was at one screening. And Marc thought, well, there's your marketing campaign. You position it as the ultimate modern date movie. See it with someone you're not quite certain about.
Right. Then for sure afterwards where they stand.
But it is interesting, right? I mean, like, what people laugh at, what people find uncomfortable, what people laugh at, does say a lot about us as individuals, and it evolves over time. I mean, I am often the only person in a theater laughing at something, and then, especially if I get to see it on the festival circuit, and then by the time it comes out, then it's accepted, oh, this is funny. But it can be really uncomfortable to know whether you're supposed to laugh at something. And with the Ladykillers, it was great. It was great fun, even in those earliest test screenings, to hear how everybody's kind of laughing at the beginning of the film, and then by the end of the first act, now it's only guys laughing. And by the middle of the film, it's only guys who aren't there with women who are laughing. And then by the end of the second act, suddenly it's the women who are sitting up in their seats, and now they're the ones who are laughing. So it's really been fun to see how the movie plays, differently for people throughout the course of its running time.
Wow. I can only imagine. I do love the being able to laugh at things, and I don't typically laugh at. I guess. What am I trying to say? It is really unpredictable what will make me laugh. I'd say I will smile and appreciate a lot of things. I'm really not a great audience for like stand-up comedy, even though I've been attending it a lot recently, because there's a pretty decent stand-up comedy scene in Humboldt County, oddly enough. Perhaps not oddly, but usually it's moments in dark comedies that and they usually have to surprise me in some way, and then I'll actually emit a laugh. Most of the time I'm kind of softly chuckling and appreciating things. So a surprise usually makes me laugh, which is, I don't know what that's worth. It's usually the moments between the jokes when they're telling them. The last time I had a strange or a unexpected inappropriate laughter, no, it was appropriate, in a black comedy was the movie Very Bad Things.
Oh, yeah.
There's a moment there where the situation that they're in goes immediately from bad to worse, and it's not even the initial oh shit moment. It is an escalation of that afterwards. Basically, a shot where a controlled area of violence goes to spread out over the entire hotel room. For those of you who have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, I'm not really spoiling anything, but when I saw the shot of the room that had gone from, we've got the problem in one area of the room, to now we've got the problem all over the room, I started laughing uncontrollably, and I was the only one in the theater laughing. And the person I was with turned to me and said, "You're a sick fuck." You know that?
That's the only moment that I actually remember from that movie, believe it or not. You did? Did you?
Yeah, I think I did.
See, we used that very much as a counter example, as a warning case of what not to do when making this film.
Interesting.
Yeah, because we looked at, okay, why does, rarely do dark comedies land, and we were looking at the ones that failed to hit their mark as much as the ones that succeeded. What can we learn from them? And with Very Bad Things, it was the fact that it felt like, to us when we were discussing it, kind of a cynical vacation from acting for these recognizable young actors. That they knew that they could do these horrible things, and as actors, they would just seem more cool. And it was why it was really important to us in making the Ladykillers, especially when, Ari Gross, who we talked about playing or not playing Harvey Weinstein in the film, he was not the original choice for it. That part was written for another actor, and who ultimately was not available. And when he became unavailable, we got a whole bunch of quote-unquote names thrown at us of name actors who wanted to do it. And I was really disturbed about that idea, because I felt that if it was someone who was a name, we'd be letting the audience off the hook, because they'd be going, oh, well, I really hate the character they're playing, but I love that guy so much.
Right.
And you need to be able to hate these people for it to really affect you. Otherwise, there's just a certain element that's winking at the audience. And I felt that Very Bad Things was a movie that winked at the audience throughout it.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I think in the case of Very Bad Things, it probably helped that movie to do that. But this film that you have is grounded in a reality that I feel, at least it felt very real to me. And I hope that's what you were going for, because it worked.
Yeah, which is again, no small trick, because as we said, it's playing out on different levels of reality. Oh. So what do we mean by that? Because it's not the world we live in being depicted on screen, and yet somehow how these men are behaving feels all the more authentic because of it. It's a really strange trick that we were able to pull off.
Right.
It's they've captured a group of characters at their most desperate and sad points, and they just apparently seem to go through, try to get through it by being more desperate and sad.
Yeah, they meet the thing with the thing. Yeah,
they meet the thing with the thing.
Which is the name of my new podcast. Meet the thing with the thing.
Look at that.
And it will be an entirely Esperanto discussion of dark comedy.
Ooh. That sounds interesting.
All right, Tyson, do you have anything more for us, or can we turn the tables on you?
Oh, I think I'm good. I think I went over the notes I had. It was just more things with details I really liked. I didn't know why this was in here, but I figured it was. I'd ask. But if you'd like to ask your questions, it's really just there's the Mark Twain quote in the classroom that books are the liberated spirits of men, and again with the spirit theme. I found myself, after I was noticing little things, I began looking for everything and wondering if there was meaning in it. There's a little pink post-it on the computer that a character is using. It says chapters 4 through 7. And I was like, oh, is that a biblical thing? And then I realized it doesn't say what book of the Bible it would be, so perhaps not. But,
perhaps not, but perhaps.
But perhaps.
I mean, we had this one great... well, I don't want to single anybody out, but there was someone in particular on the art team, on the production design team, who really got. They were being driven nuts by me and my color scheme at times because it's really tough. It's really tough to work out colors that are used a lot in the manufacturing and the design of objects and architecture and interior design, and it needed to match and to find me duplicates of things, because there are indeed locations where the objects will stay the same, but the color of those objects will change from scene to scene. So they were being driven nuts by me, but there was one member of the team in particular who really just a switch got flipped, and he loved it, and he got so into it, and then started reading into this kind of religious element or this spiritual element of what was going on, these different levels of reality, and I gave him carte blanche. And so, like, the Mark Twain quote was him, and what was put on the Post-it note was him. And I never found myself ever saying, okay, you got to pull it back. I never, ever found that. So
very cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for talking about this with me. And
Thank you.
I really was delighted by this film. I hope more people see it. They invariably will, of course, but it's. I'm sorry. It sounded like I was interrupting something.
No, Tyson, feel free to write a little blurb review of the film in the description of this episode of Succotash, and we'll quote that. We'll excerpt your blurb in our promotional materials.
All right, I'll get to work crafting a blurb.
Fantastic.
No, do a capsule review. We'll excerpt your capsule review, but
okay. I just really wanted to say crafting a blurb.
And there you have it. The first Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast of the year in the can. Or indeed out of the can and into your ear mouths and ear bellies. Okay, that's just horrifying. Sorry about that. I'd like to thank our guests, Phil Leirness and Dean Haglund of Chillpak Hollywood Hour again for agreeing to spend time chatting with me about their film and, as you heard, other topics. Chillpak Hollywood Hour can be heard on Blog Talk Radio, Stitcher, and iTunes, and you can find the archive of Chillpak Hollywood Hour at www.chillpakhollywood.com. That is ChillpakHollywOod.com. The show can be reached on Twitter at Dean and Phil, that is capital DEAN, capital AND, capital PHIL. Phil Leirness can be reached at Phil Leirness, that is at PHILLEIRNESS, and Dean Haglund at D Haglund, that is DHAGLUND. And remember, You can find the website of their 2017 film, The Ladykillers, 3 words, at theladykillersmovie.com. TheLadykillersMovie.com, where you can purchase the film on disc as well as be updated on theatrical screenings of The Ladykillers when those are announced. If you want to see it at home or on your device, there are many options, including iTunes, Google Play, Vudu, Microsoft Store, Amazon Prime Video, FlixFling, DirecTV, Fandango Now, Verizon's Watch Fios service, YouTube, MCTV, and Steam. I'd also like to thank you, the listener, for spending time with us this episode and every episode you choose to listen to. You're nothing if not spoiled for choice of what to listen to, and I am nothing without you. Okay, that's a bit much. I shouldn't say I'm nothing, even when attempting to compliment you. It's unhealthy behavior, and I made a New Year's resolution to be healthier both physically and mentally, so we'll see how that goes. I hope your 2019 shapes up to be a delightful one, and I also hope that the film The Ladykillers becomes part of the larger conversation about how humans treat each other. So we'll see how that goes as well. Thank you again for listening, and if I could ask something only slightly more of you, it would be to tell other people about this program, as well as the programs featured within, for that is what we mean when we ask you to, please, pass the Succotash.
You've been listening to Succotash Chat, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast with your host, Tyson Saner. Brought to you by Henderson's Pants and...
Imagine your company's name right here.
Find us on the web at succotashshow.com, on iTunes, on Stitcher Smart Radio, on SoundCloud, on YouTube, on Dunder, on Blitzen, on iHeartRadio, and on a laughable app. You can hear us streaming and like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Succotash Show. Email us at TysonSaner@succotashshow.com. Or call into the Succotash hotline at our toll call number, 818-921-7212.
That number again is 818-921-7212.
You can also upload clips from your favorite comedy soundcasts directly to us by using our direct upload link at hightail.com/u/Succotash. Production of Succotash is overseen by Joe Paulino through the auspices of Studio P Sausalito, hosted by Tyson Saner. Our executive producer is Marc Hershon. Our musical director is Scott Carvey. Our booth assistant is Kenny Durges. Until next time, I'm your loyal booth announcer, Bill Haywatt, reminding you to please pass the Succotash. Goodbye.